What's going on, family? Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's continue to examine 100 years of World Championship fights. Now, on the Monday night, April 30th, 1928, 25-year-old Jack Sharkey knocks out former world light heavyweight champion, 28-year-old Jack Delaney, in one round at New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, the referee was Lou Magnolia. He decided to stop the fight 1 minute and 13 seconds into the first round. 15,000 spectators were shocked. Although Jack Sharkey was a 3-1 favorite to win a decision. I mean, after all, he was a heavyweight who stood 6 foot and he had a 76-inch reach. As for Jack Delaney, was a light heavyweight. He stood 5'11" and had a 73.5-inch reach. Jack Sharkey came into the ring with a record of 27 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, and 8 knockouts. Jack Delaney walked into the ring with more experience of 71 wins, 10 losses, 2 draws, and 39 knockouts. Unfortunately, Jack Sharkey would die on a Wednesday night at Beverly Hospital due to respiratory arrest. He fought the likes of Jack Delaney, Max Schmeling, Jack Dempsey, and Joe Louis, Primo Carnera, Tommy Loughran, Mike McTeague. He had a record of 38 wins, 13 losses. He was 91 years of age at the time of his death. Now, the next day after that fight with Delaney, the chairman of New York State Athletic Commission had warned both Jack Delaney and Jack Sharkey of an investigation that he was going to have because it was a rumor that a fight would be thrown. February 18, 1927, Jack Delaney was matched against Jim Maloney, who was a heavyweight. It was a tournament to try and see who would reign supreme to Gene Tunney's retirement. Because Gene Tunney had rumored to retire in 1928 after Tom Heaney. And Jack Sharkey also met Jim Maloney. They met Jack Dempsey after feeding Jack Delaney. It was called a foul. So Jack Sharkey has been through many fouled attempts with Max Schmeling and Jim Maloney and Jack Delaney because Jack Delaney tried to quit in that fight. It was unbelievable. But Jack Sharkey, who was known as the Boston Gob, would eventually get his shot. 1932 against Max Schmeling, and he would become the America's World Heavyweight Champion. Friday, June 1st, 1928, 25-year-old Philly Phantom. His name is Tommy Loughran. Defends his World Light Heavyweight Championship crown against former New York SAC World Welterweight Champion, 25-year-old Pete LaCho. So in a 15-round affair, Brooklyn, New York's Ebbets Field, referee was Jed Graham. The judge was Charles F. Matheson and Tom Allen. They all agreed on the winner. Tommy Loughran stood 5'11.5". He was a light heavyweight. He had a 73-inch reach. He had a record of 82 wins, 14 losses, 8 draws, and 12 knockouts. As for Pete LaCho, he stood 5'7.5". He was a middleweight. Now, he was originally a welterweight. In fact, he took the welterweight championship belt away from Mickey Walker. He had a 68-inch reach and had a record of 88 wins, 22 losses, 4 draws, and 24 by the knockout rule. Now, the Associated Press had it 5 rounds for Loughran, 4 rounds for LaCho, and 1 even. Now, who was Pete LaCho? His name was Young Clancy. He was born August 1st, 1902. Pennsylvania. He died July 7th, 1968. He was 65 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Stood 5'7.5". He was a welterweight and had a 68-inch reach. Had a total bout career of 146 fights, 93 wins, 25 knockouts, 39 losses, 12 draws, and 2 no contests. He was in the ring with Mickey Walker, May 20th, 1926, June 3rd, 1927. Very good fighter was Pete LaCho. But he would take on Tommy Loughran Friday, June 1st, 1928. January 17th, 1930. London's lightweight star, 20-year-old Jackie Kittberg. His name was Judith Bergman. He was known as the Whitechapel Whirlwind. He defeats 21-year-old Tony Canzoneri in a heated 10-round battle in New York's Madison Square Garden for the NBA lightweight and the NBA junior welterweight championship belt. Referee was Mike Hyas. Tony Canzoneri stood 5'4". He was a junior welterweight with a 65-inch reach. Came into the ring with a record of 66 wins, 6 losses, 8 draws, and 20 knockouts. As for Jackie Kittberg, he stood 5 foot 9 inches. He was a junior welterweight. And he walked into the ring with a record of 74 wins, 4 losses, 5 draws, and 29 knockouts. Between July 9th, 1929 and October 30th, 1929, Tony Canzoneri faced Phill McLarnin, Johnny Farr, and Sammy Mandell. Jackie Kittberg faced Phill McLarnin, Bruce Flowers, between September 30th, 1929 and October 10th, 1929. It was a great fight between these two men that took place January 17th, 1930. Saturday, January 9th, 1930. Brooklyn, New York's Frankie Gennaro defeats Paris, France flyweight Yvonne Tretic. 12 rounds, knocks him out at the Welterweight in Paris. It was for the IBU and NABF. It was for the IBU and the NBA flyweight championship belt. Gennaro is 28 years old. He stood 5 foot 1. He was a flyweight with a 63-inch reach. He won 78 fights, 17 losses, 7 draws, and 9 knockouts. Tretic was 19 years old. He was a flyweight, had 15 wins and 14 knockouts. It's for the IBU and the NBA flyweight championship belt. I want to make that correction. And understand that Frankie Gennaro was the star in the flyweight division. And in a previous video, I actually explained to you about Black Bill. And Frankie Gennaro was always wanted in New York to be the star. But he was a very, very good fighter. He really was. And he deserved the opportunity. But it's just unfortunate. There were certain fighters. The careers had to be manipulated in order to make sure a certain fighter stayed on top. That was Frankie Gennaro, January 9th, 1930. You're looking at Yvonne Tretic flyweight right here on your right. He was a good boxer, moved from side to side. But he couldn't control the pace of Frankie Gennaro because Frankie Gennaro was a bow-in fighter. He was very fast. He actually boxed like Willie Pep, but he was strong and he would punch you with 2 hands. And he would move in on you. Then he would back away and move from side to side. He was very, very fast on his feet. February 10th, 1930. Buffalo, New York's light heavyweight Jimmy Slattery defeats Buffalo native rival Scauser for 15 rounds at the Broadway Auditorium in Buffalo. The referee was Jim Crowley. The judge was Joe Angelino. And the other judge was Arthur Donovan. He would become a well-rounded, well-pronounced referee. He would be famous for the 1938 rematch between Max Mellon and Joe Louis. We'll go through that fight in 1938. But he'd be called into the State Athletic Commission's office and be told by them, unless a man is completely knocked out or the cornerman steps in and save his man, you don't stop the fight. That's why he took the rag and threw it back out after the cornerman of Max Mellon had thrown the towel into the ring. But he would be the second judge in that fight. And collectively, they would all decide that Jimmy Slattery would win the verdict of that fight. Slattery was 25 years old. He stood 5 foot 11 and a half inches. He was a New York SAC light heavyweight champion. Had a 74-inch reach. Had 106 wins, 8 losses, no draws, and 46 knockouts. As for Scauser, he was 24 years old. Stood 5 foot 9 inches. He was a light heavyweight and had a 69-inch reach. He won 51 fights, 13 losses, 7 draws, and 21 knockouts. Scauser was born April 15, 1905 in Buffalo, New York. He died November 11, 1967 in Buffalo as well. Fought from 1925 to 1934. Had 114 total bouts. 78 wins, 27 losses, 27 knockouts, and 9 draws. Now, between February 7th, 1925, and October 12th, 1925, he won 14 fights, 1 draw. He faced Frank Moody, who was from Wales, United Kingdom. Now, Frank Moody had 204 total bouts, 127 wins, 55 losses, and 66 knockouts. Frank Moody fought Allentown Joe Gans and Kid Norfolk, Harry Greb, Jack Delaney, Jeff Smith, Tiger Flowers, Mike McTeague, George Nichols, and Max T. Rosenblum. Frank Moody was the goods. Now, Lou Scauser would face him, and he would defeat him. That's the fight that took place between Jimmy Slattery and Lou Scauser, February 10th, 1930. It was in defense of the New York SAC Light Heavyweight Championship belt. It took place in Buffalo, New York. Tuesday, February 18th, 1930. Jackie Kittberg stops Mushy Callahan, and in the 11th round is scheduled for 15 to win the NBA Junior Welterweight Championship crown. It was at the Royal Albert Hall in Kingston, London. Now, Mushy Callahan was 24 years old. He stood 5'7.5" and he had a 70-inch reach. He won 47 fights, 14 losses, 3 draws, and 22 knockouts. As for Jackie Kittberg, he was 20 years old. He stood 5'9" and he was a junior welterweight. He had 75 wins, 4 losses, 5 draws, and 29 knockouts. Who was Mushy Callahan? His name was Vincent Morris Shear. He was born November 3rd, 1905 in Brooklyn, New York. He died June 16th, 1986 in Hollywood, California. He became a referee, a judge in Hollywood. Now, his job was a director for movie scenes related to boxing. He was also a stunt double. Had a very good boxing career. 67 total bouts, 49 wins, 15 losses, 22 knockouts, and he was stopped 3 times. But he also refereed and judged hundreds of fights. Now, he was in the ring with Spud Myers and Jackie Fields, Jimmy Goodwrench, Ralph Chong, Todd Morgan, Sgt Sammy Baker, Dick Hope, just to name a few. So Mushy Callahan was a very good fighter, but he couldn't handle Jack Kittberg on the night of Tuesday, February 18th, 1930, for the NBA Junior Welterweight Championship crown. Now, you hear me talk about Sgt Sammy Baker many times. He's very underrated. Had over 163 fights. His name was Peniel Roy Baker. Stood 5'8". He was a welterweight, but he was in the ring with many, many fighters. He was from Alabama, and he would reside in New York. He had like 111 or 112 wins. And he was in the ring with everyone. As the series goes on, I'll be talking a little bit more about Sgt Sammy Baker. A lot of people don't know his career that well, but he was something else. Heard plenty of stories. Sgt Sammy Baker. Had a friend, Teddy, who knew all the fighters in Stillman's gym. And he told me Baker was a good fighter. So we'll get into his career as our series goes by. Thursday, February 27th, 1930. Boston Gobjack Sharkey stops London heavyweight Phill Scott 3 rounds. Was scheduled for 15 rounds at Miami Madison Square Garden. The referee was Lou Magnolia. And Lou Magnolia was siding with the claim of Phill Scott that Jack Sharkey tried to foul him with a low blow, but it was overturned by the commission. Jack Sharkey was 27 years old. He stood 6 foot. He was a heavyweight, had a 76-inch reach. Walked in the ring with a record of 33 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, and 8 KOs at that time. Now, Scott was 30 years old. He stood 6'3.5". He was a heavyweight with an 82-inch reach. Walked into the ring with 64 wins, 10 losses, 4 draws, and 29 knockouts. Now, Phill Scott, his name was Philip Scuffing. He was born January 3rd, 1900 in London, United Kingdom. He died December 23rd, 1983, Southampton. and United Kingdom. Fought from 1919 to 1931. He had a record of 83 fights, 64 wins, 13 losses, 29 knockouts, and he was stopped 8 times. Now the thing is, he would win the British Empire Light Heavyweight Championship belt from George Cook. He would fight Jack Stanley, Tom Heaney, Gypsy Daniels, who would knock out Max Schmeling in 1 round. Max Schmeling would return the favor to him. Otto Van Poort, Young Stribling, Larry Gans, Victorio Campolo, Johnny Risco, Paulino Escudon, and Ted Samwina. Now he would win the British Empire Heavyweight Championship belt, not the Light Heavyweight Championship belt, from George Cook. Let's take a look at that fight between the Boston Garb, Jack Sharkey, and London's heavyweight, Phill Scott.